Shall I proceed, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. We can start up.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Good morning to everyone. I extend a very warm welcome to all the participants and our today's session speakers for this AICTE-sponsored STTP on mitigation of power quality issues in distributed generation systems using custom power devices phase 2. Welcome, users. I welcome our STTP coordinator, Professor Dr. P. Usharani ma'am, to introduce our today's session speakers.
Hello. Good morning to one and all present here. I welcome you all for 5th day of our STTP program, RMD Engineering College. In order to have some conventional training, today we are providing you a virtual training by a pioneer in power quality field, namely Fluke, the power quality analyzer, Mr. Jyoti Prakash, application engineer from Elmech Engineering Services, and Mr. Muniraj sir from Elmech Engineering Services, representing Fluke. I take this opportunity to welcome you, sir. I thank on behalf of our management, our college, and on my own behalf, I thank you for accepting our invitation to deliver the session. Kindly take over the session, sir. Please, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the intro. So I will start now. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I am Jyoti Prakash, an application engineer for Fluke Products, working at Elmech Engineering Services Private Limited, Chennai. So today's topic is power quality analyzing techniques and case studies. At the end of the day, I will also try to cover the virtual training. So by using a real power quality analyzer with the power quality simulator I'm having right now with me. So I will try to cover that thing also. So we Elmech Engineering Services, who are a major dealer for world-renowned brands like Fluke, Keysight Technologies, and Megger test and measurement instruments. So we are doing the business across the country since 1993. And because of this strong backup and strong history, so we can offer you the best solution for all kinds of electrical and electronic testing and measuring applications. So well, that all been said, so today's agenda is, I will start with the power quality problems. Why we need to care for the power quality problems? I will give you some what are the mysteries what I faced in the earlier people since around 1990s and how it is started. And after that, I will give you an overview of what are the major power quality parameters we are always keen about. And don't worry about that. And I'm not going to teach about what is term and definition and formulas. I will try to majorly concentrate on the measuring techniques, and I will and interpret even with some useful tips. So why we need to concentrate on this measuring techniques? Because you know that once famous quote from Lord Kelvin is, if you cannot measure it, you cannot able to improve it. So if you know how to measure the things, definitely you can able to improvise. So whatever may be, whatever thing, so especially it will be helpful for our electrical people. So if you can able to measure your power quality parameters and all those things, if you know that, how to do that, definitely you can able to improve it. And I hope it will be helpful for your projects and your academic as well as for your industry concerns. So after that, and second session, afternoon session, I will start with the standards. So all over the world, what people are following for the power quality parameters. So definitely it should be it should have some standard like IEC or IEEE. So what is the limit? How much harmonious is the limit for in electrical network and all those things? I will try to share. And after that, I'm having some 3 to 4 case studies. So which are real case studies, and I will share that thing also. At the end of the day, if time permits, I will arrange this virtual training, and I will connect my power quality to the PQ simulator, and I will try to show you how a power quality parameters will look like. And so this is the today's agenda. So apart from this, if you have any doubt or any query in the mid of the session, you can unmute yourself and you can ask me directly. So I think it's a bit clear. Yeah. Okay. So why we need to care about power quality parameter? You know that it all starts with a mystery. So around 1990s, this kind of mysteries are happening. So I listed out some mysteries, and the first one is transformers supplying seemingly average load, but it is actually overheating. This is a major and a very important mystery faced by our people at 1990. So they don't know about why it is heating. So this is a major mystery which led us to think on the power quality healthiness. Okay. We know that a transformer has its own rating. So when we are replacing the transformer at average or at lesser than the rated capacity, definitely it should not heat over than it is rated temperature. So but what was happened earlier is, so transformers actually supplying very average load in the range between 50 to 60% of its loading capacity, but that is actually overheating. Here you can see this is a thermal image taken at one of the substation, and you can see the temperature of a transformer is actually rising, but I'm not showing any temperature degrees here. This is for just a demonstration purpose. So this kind of thermal images are actually very helpful for your understanding. Before going into the troubleshooting section, you can able to identify what could be the problem. You can able to analyze. So that's why electrical people are using this kind of thermal images to find the problems even before it is happening. Okay. So the first mystery, as I told, transformer supplying average loads, but it is actually overheating. So the second mystery is neutral conductors in a three-phased balanced circuits are actually burning out. So we know that electrical guys in a three-phased balanced circuit, the current in the neutral conductor will be zero. All right. Okay. So if current is zero, then why it is overheating? It's actually a big mystery for our people, and so we consider this mystery, and this leads to the electrical people again to think on a power quality problem. So third mystery was a little bit common mystery to every industry. Circuit breakers are tripping, but apparently with no reason. Okay. So that the circuit breakers are rated correctly to their load, but it is tripping apparently. So it is tripping oftenly, but they couldn't able to find what is the problem with their standard troubleshooting techniques, like by using multimeter or by using a current clamp meter. It's showing everything is under normal, but they couldn't able to find what is the problem which causing this circuit breakers are tripping. So this was the mysteries was happened earlier at 1990s. So this drive our electrical people to think on the power quality healthiness. Right. So they found out that these are the problems are actually generated from a nonlinear loads that actually form part of a advanced automation system. Say for example, computers or drives. So all of these are an advanced automation systems, which is actually nonlinear load. So I think there's no need for giving a definition or a demonstration between linear and nonlinear nodes. If we guys know that. We know that in earlier days, before 1990, so the major power consumption is due to the linear loads like incandescent lamps and direct online motors. So we know that it was actually a nice era for electrical people. There wouldn't be any much more problem except the efficiency. And here is one screenshot of waveform. So the red indicates the voltage and blue indicates the current waveform, and the yellow color labeled waveform indicates the power graph, where the current waveform is actually following the voltage, being it is a linear load. We didn't face any kind of problems, but when we tried to improve the efficiency of our electrical equipment, so we introduced some electronic switches. So switching power supplies are introduced so to maintain to improve its efficiency. So this is a waveform. You can see the same voltage waveform, but now the current consumption is like a short pulses. So why we are consuming the current, why we are using the switching mode power supply, everything is, we know that it's because we need to improve its efficiency. So this is the power consumption drawn from your electricity. So this was introduced in a good purpose, like to improve efficiency, but in a reverse, it causes a harmonics in the load current. Okay, so this kind of harmonics in the load current actually caused that transformers, what we saw in the earlier pictures, and neutral conductors to overheat as well as to burning out. And as well as this is a major cause for a tripping of circuit breakers also. So these are the main mysteries which, as I told you, is to strive our electrical engineers to think on the power quality healthiness. So apart from this transformer failure and overheating of neutral conductors, there are often failure of electronic products like SMPS problems and all those things, and increase in electricity bill. So this thing I will explain you later, how power quality parameters increase your electricity bill. So in industry, there will be a downtime due to the maintenance period and uncorrupted data in computers. So and all those things led them to decrease their productivity, ultimately decrease their profit. So these are the main problems which why we are caring about this power quality thing. So what are the power quality parameters majorly we are keen about? So power quality parameters actually covers a wide range of issues. So it's like voltage disturbances, may look like a voltage sag or a voltage swell, even outages and voltage transients. And apart from this, we well familiar harmonics and unbalancing voltage inputs flickers. These are some power quality parameters we people are always looking at our electrical network. So out of this above set problems, this is a chart which is from which is taken from one statistical report. Out of this set above problem, the most hello, okay. So the impact of the power quality problems versus their expenses to repair that. So this is a chart. When you look around this chart, you may note down voltage dips are actually causing more problem in industry than any other power quality issues. And the second one, which will rank up for harmonics as well as transients, which is covering up to 40% of the expenses to repair in industries. So apart from this, swells and unbalance. So these are the major. So these are the major power quality parameters industry peoples are facing in the year like in a commercial way. Okay. We know that what are the power quality parameters, but we need to understand in a correct way how to measure them. So I cannot able to say. So this is the correct method to measure your voltage drag. This is the correct method to voltage drag. There should be some limitations. There should be some standards. So this is the standard which actually let you to know. So how to measure your power quality parameters. That is nothing but IEC 61000-4-30. Actually, this is an international standard which is stipulating how power quality should be measured, and also is having some classes for the measuring instruments that needs to be certified in compliance with this IEC 61000-4-30. It comes under the category of Class A power quality analyzer. If it is compliant with this standard, we will call that as a Class A power quality analyzer, because it is having a reliable and repeatable measurement results regardless of the original manufacturer. If you are using one power quality analyzer, if you are customer using some other power quality analyzer, if both are Class A, then it is a compatible. So this is why they introduced this kind of standard to format the power quality measuring technique. So in addition to this, as I told, they also separated the power quality instruments into 3 classes, like Class A, Class B, and Class S. The most reliable power quality measurements can be made by a Class A instruments. So Class B actually not in the market right now. It was outdated, and right now what you may purchase is like Class A and Class S categories. So this is a difference between Class A and Class S. So when you choose your Class A and when you are supposed to choose Class S. So if you want to do some more precise measurements in power as well as voltage, RMS and current value, you definitely need a class A power quality instruments. What that means is it will compliance to the IEC 61000-4-30 standard. This will be very useful for R&D people as well as for auditors, energy auditors, and all those people are using this class A power quality analyzer. And what is the speciality in this kind of meter is these techniques are, as I told, it's compliant with the IEC 61000-4 method, and also it having the time clock accuracy as mentioned in the IEC standard. When you compare the power quality analysis in a commercial way, the price of the power quality analyzer will increase because of its accuracy. So this is a time clock accuracy for every power quality analyzer was in the market. There has some different time clock accuracy, but if you are choosing class A accuracy, that will be the most accurate one in the market. As well as I told, RMS calculation, everything will be more accurate when you compare with the class S. So where you can choose your class equipments, class S equipments is where you do not require low uncertainty. Where when you in the measurements, you do not need any kind of most accurate results. You can go for a class S instrument. So, and that all being said, I will try to cover this. So I will try to start with this overview of parameters. So the first one what we faced. So I will follow the pattern from that the graph what we earlier saw. The most damageable power quality parameters is voltage, sag and swell. I think someone is unmuted.
Participants, kindly mute yourself and turn off your camera. Sorry, sir. Sorry for the interruption.
No issues. No, thank you so much. So as I told, I'm not going to give you any kind of definition and formulas. This is just a little bit overview. We know that what is a voltage, sag and swell. So the line voltage is actually higher or lower than a nominal voltage for a very shorter period. So if you see in the graph, so this is our nominal or normal voltage level. So when it is get reduced, the amplitude of our peak get reduced, we will call it as a dip or sag. So if it is over than our nominal voltage, then we call that as a swell. So that's a very easiest way to understand. And there is also standard. We need to define. So how much is the plus or minus level? For example, if you are consuming 230 volt AC, so which voltage is considered as a dip and which voltage is considered as a swell? As I told earlier, that was all set by IEC standard. Okay, so that limit and all those things we will cover in the afternoon session. So what is the major cause for this dips and sags? Because as you saw in the graph, it is actually making a more damage to the equipment than any other power quality parameters in a commercial way, when you see in the commercial way. So we need to figure out this is the cause for this more dips and swells. Switching of capacitive banks is a major contributor for voltage dips, as well as big motors. When you're switching big motors, it will create some inrush current. So inrush currents is also a major contributor for a voltage dip problem. So what it will do in your electrical network? So if dips are there, so what will happen in your electrical network means if you're having a computers or a microcontrollers driving some variable frequency drives or any other computers in a data centers or something like that, you may face some loss of data. So your microcontroller automatically resets at every time when it faces a dip. So this is a very common failure for elevator and lift people. So who are working in a lift and elevator, they are facing this resetting of microcontroller data every time, because we people don't want to stuck in an elevator or a lift at the mid of the way. So this is a major concern problem for this kind of drive people. And we know that if there is some voltage is low, definitely there will be loss of power, and majorly it will cause some damage to the equipment. You may face some like burning effect in the board PCBs in your power supplies due to this dip problem. And as I told earlier, I will try to concentrate more on the measuring techniques. So apart from the terms and definitions and problems, you can find it anywhere. And as I told, I will try to cover this measuring technique as much as possible. So right now, if you are facing a voltage sag problem, or else the problems that above, like reset and loss of data in your computers, definitely you should go to monitor for voltage sag and swell, because we know that this is a voltage sag and swell is causing the kind of data reset problem. So first question is where you should connect a meter. Okay, so this is a very important point when you are troubleshooting power quality or in an electrical network. Where should I connect a meter? So I'm facing a voltage sag problem at the input of my VFDs. So I should look around for the cause or the source for the voltage sag. So we know that, as I told you earlier, this is caused majorly by starting current. So when you start a big motor or a big capacitor tank, when you switch on, it will draw some more starting current. Usually we refer to as a inrush current. So this momentary high current may cause a momentary low voltage, what we call as a sag. So because of the additional IR drop through the conductor. Such sags are often caused by the loads, as I told, inrush currents on the same branch cycle. So if you are facing voltage problems, which I said earlier, like data and resetting, loss of data, you are going to connect your meter and you have to look for a inrush current at the same branch where you are facing the problem. So there you should go and connect your meter. So it's simple. So if you're having a sag issue, check for the loads which causing for the inrush current. So if you limit the inrush current, so definitely you can able to reduce your voltage sag problem. Okay, so how to measure? So because when I want to measure a dip, I cannot able to do with my multimeter. It definitely not going to show anything. We can use a data logger or something like that. And this is a tool called as a Fluke Power Quality Analyzer, Fluke 435. The method is very simple. Just go and select in the menu, and it will automatically gives you the graph waveform. In the bottom you can see as a event. So it will compare the voltage, instantaneous voltage, with the standard, and if the instantaneous voltage recording and measuring exceeds that limit set by the standard, it will automatically log it as an event. So this is the event screen. So see, say for example, this is a type of event, swell dip, swell dip. So it will automatically capture at what date it was started, at what time, how much is the voltage level it went, and how much duration it was existed. So this is the thing what we actually want from a logging system. So it will directly give you the results. No need of worry about that. Even it will give you the waveform, how the waveform is looks like a sine wave. So how it is looks like while dip was happened. So you can able to see that thing also. So here's some useful tips. Just imagine yourself, you are going to monitor, you are going to troubleshoot some voltage sag problem. Right now you can see in the image, you are in the front of a service entrance. In a building, you are in the front of a service entrance. Now your job is, you are encountering some data loss problem in this building. You need to figure out where is the cause for that voltage sag, whether it is inside the building or from the EB side. So you need to figure out. So just imagine you are in this situation. So you are monitoring the voltage as well as the current waveform. So there is a simple trick to find whether the cause is from the inside of your building or from the outside from your building. So if you monitor the voltage as well as current at the same time, when the cause is inside the building, the current consumption will rise due to the inrush current or a short circuit, whatever may be. So this causes a momentary voltage drop because due to the insufficient power supply capacity. So if you facing this kind of graph, like if you are monitoring voltage and current, so now you are encountering drop in voltage as well as a rise in current, you can easily figure out the cause was inside the building. So go and check for each machine which causes this high inrush current. So this is the easiest way to predict. And on the controversy, on the other hand, what if the problem was from outside the building? Say for example, the EB side. If you see in the graphs, both voltage waveform and current trend will drop. So this anomaly, you can able to predict this anomaly was happened due to the outside the building. So as I told, it is very important to know where should you go and measure. So if you are monitoring at the power entrance, you can easily able to predict whether the source for that voltage dip is inside the building or outside the building just by looking at your voltage and current waveforms. I think that will be helpful for you. So that all been said, I will set the most important, most common power quality parameter like harmonics. So it is not necessary, there is not no need to give a definition for harmonics because we are very familiar with what is a harmonics and what the problems it will cause to our electrical network. So here are some problems like what you saw in the initial slides, failures in neutral conductors, transformer overheating and motor overheating. And there's another important problem with harmonics is unusable power which actually drawn from the utility from your transformer, but actually it is not converted to a actual work. As well as there is a transformer reducing in efficiency because it has to accommodate that harmonic current also. For example, if you are having 1 kVA, 1 MVA transformer, you are having load as 500 kVA, but your harmonic current consuming of about another 250 kVA. So your transformer efficiency got reduced to a 75%. So this is how it works. And so to know this more on the transformer capacity thing, so this is a graph which is taken from IEEE 1100 1992. So what is this graph is? It's showing the transformer derating curve. So definitely the temperature will rise when you increase the load. So on the y-axis you can see it's a transformer capacity in percentage for electronic loads. As well as in the x-axis it's showing us it's giving you a switch mode power supply load out of your overall load. So when you see in the graph, when I don't have any kind of switch mode power supply, I can able to utilize my transformer at a full load. I can able to do. But if your load consists of switch mode power supply, your transformer rating got reduced to 50%. That's for the IEEE standard. So they are saying, so your transformer may derated to a 50%. Say for example, as I told you, if you are having 1 MVA transformer, so if your load consists of 60% of switch mode power supply load, then you cannot able to utilize more than a 500 kVA for an actual power consumption. So that's all been said. So I will again concentrating more on the measuring technique. So how can I able to understand whether my system has harmonics or not without having any kind of high cost power analyzer or a power quality analyzer thing? So you can easily able to find out using a multimeter. So if it has a facility of measuring peak voltage as well as RMS voltage, just measure, we know that term called a crest factor, which is the ratio of peak to RMS voltage. Normally we know that for a pure sine wave, it should around 1.414, that's nothing but a square root of. So if you are encountering crest factor more than 1.8 or higher than that, it indicating your system having a high voltage waveform distortion. So if you know this preliminary test, if you do this preliminary test, no need of go to buy and powerless and all those things. After that, you can able to know whether, because I think my electric network has some harmonic issue, so I go and I can take my power analyzer and I can able to connect and I can able to study. So this is like a preliminary hint you can able to identify by using a crest factor function. Okay. So if you're having a power quality analyzer, definitely it will consist of some scope function. You can able to view the waveform. If you are seeing in the waveform, you can able to predict whether a waveform has a distortion or not. Then you can go and study for the order of harmonics and total harmonic distortion by using one power quality analyzer. And also there is another clue you can get from a crest factor. If you are using some drives or SMPS loads, you know that AC is converted into a DC at the rectification section at the input of your VFDs or whatever may be switching mode power supplies. The output DC is majorly, it's actually a predominant factor for the output at the VFD side. So that DC voltage is going to switching action. After that, you are going to get as a PWM wave in a VFD output. When my that DC voltage after the rectification section is actually depends on the peak voltage of our sine wave. So if you monitor this peak voltage also, there is another clue you can able to get whether your system has a flat top voltage. You can able to easily predict if the peak and the RMS voltage is lesser than 1.414. You may note your system has a flat top voltage. So and your drives and your SMP power supply load definitely going to suffer. So this is a preliminary test and a very useful technique. And the second one is power factor and DPF. It will be a little bit interesting for you because normally if you're seeing in an energy meter in our home, whatever may be, we will call that term as a power factor. So we know that what is a power factor is. And if you come into the power quality analysis session, there will be two power factors. It will display two types of power factors like a displacement power factor as well as a normal power factor. So what is this displacement power factor which is actually showing in your power quality analyzer? If you have a power quality analyzer, you may note it will show two types of power factors like a displacement power factor as well as a power factor. So what is this displacement power factor means is it is actually calculated from the fundamental power. It is the ratio of a fundamental kV to a fundamental real power. So what is this fundamental means? It will allow only the 50 Hz signal. So it will have some that filtering section. It will filter only the power which is drawn by a 50 Hz sine wave. So it will take the ratio and it will give you the displacement power factor, which is a fundamental power factor. This is the same power factor what you are looking at your energy meter in your home or in your normal home residential energy meter. So the displacement power factor is actually you are seeing because it's viewing only the 50 Hz signal. But in power quality analyzer, there is an option called you can able to go and monitor the harmonics also. So this power factor actually gives you the full bandwidth and it will give you the total power factor of your full spectrum. Not only the 50 Hz up to the 50th order harmonic depends upon your power quality, the order of harmonic. So it depends upon it will give you the result of power factor to the full bandwidth. Say for example, if I am having a harmonics content, so definitely the power factor will get reduced because I am having one peak at 50 Hz, and I'm having another peak at the third order and the fifth order. If you add on those things, the power factor compared to the DPF is very less, will get less because it is adding some harmonics content also. So the power factor will, you can get a low power factor and a high DPF. So if you face a situation where your power factor and a DPF is not a same reading, definitely there is an indication of presence of harmonics. So I will repeat again. So if you are measuring in a power quality analyzer, if you note down these two parameters, power factor and DPF, if the power factor is less than the DPF, definitely I'm 10% sure there is a presence of harmonics in your system. Then you can go and study your harmonic spectrum. So this will be a preliminary. Again, this is a preliminary test. This is actually a very useful thing also. And third important parameter, I will call that as a parameter, is a harmonic K factor. So what is one of the advantage of having one power quality analyzer is you can able to find this K factor. If you are doing some energy auditing work, this is a very really helpful feature. So let's see. So what is this K factor? K factor is actually a specific measure of the heating effect of harmonics, especially in a transformers. So if the measured K factor is actually larger than the multiplication factor, we know that the multiplication factor from a mutual conductance. If measured K factor is larger than the multiplication factor, so the transformer must be replaced with one larger K factor. This is a hint for power energy auditors to know whether the transformer load capacity is in a correct rated or not. Okay. So for example, if you are having a K factor like K4 while you are measuring or K13 while you are measuring, but your transformer is rated for a K4. The installed transformer is K4 rated, but you are getting a K13. So definitely you can able to tell your transformer is going to get derated and your transformer life is going to get reduced because of harmonics that will introduce heat. you may know that why the harmonic content is creating that much heat in a transformer as well as motors. Because the stray losses, the core losses in a transformer is actually directly proportional to the frequency component. If a higher frequency harmonic current, higher frequency component are present in a transformer or in a motor, so definitely the losses will increase. So if the losses is increased, definitely the temperature will increase. If the temperature is increased, definitely it will reduce your lifetime of your transformer. So this is a formula to calculate. This is a formula how a power quality analyzer is calculating its K factor. So here IK is a ratio of a harmonic current to the fundamental current. So like in percentage, what we are saying is a 1% or 2%. So this is the same as that. And K is the number of order of harmonics. So from this equation, you may know that the higher order the harmonics current have a greater influence on the K factor than the lower order harmonic current, because we know that frequencies losses are directly proportional to the square of the frequency, especially AC current losses. So as I said earlier, so if you're having a K4 rating transformer, but if you are getting a K13 rating, you can easily tell your customer that your transformer is not going to sustain to the rated lifetime. It's going to get reduced. So please reduce your load, or else you have to change your transformer rate K factor rating by installing another transformer. So this is also another good and useful technique for people who are in study of energy auditing and all those things. And the most underrated and not much notable thing is interharmonics. So in Fluke 435 power quality, there is an option you can able to monitor this interharmonics also. So you may know that what is this interharmonic. So it is a non-integer multiple of a fundamental frequency which is existing in your electrical network. And which causes this kind of interharmonics is when you are using a drive which has a function to change its current magnitude or a phase angle with the help of any switches like thyristors or IGBT, it will introduce interharmonics. So what it will do means it will introduce some acoustic disturbances to your nearby telecom communication signal or something like that. And it is also having a very major effect in timing devices. So when you are going to people like, when you meet people like ISRO and NASA people, they are very keen about timing because their system always runs based on the GPS time domain. When the interharmonics get introduced, this timing devices will get reduced its accuracy. That's a big major problem for them. So they are keen about this interharmonics. However, interharmonics do not generally occur in a high voltage circuits. When you go into the SC side of a transformer, you cannot able to find this interharmonics. It is purely in the LT side only. So another one important is higher order harmonic current. So you can see in the graph, it is consisting more harmonic content in a higher order frequency. So this is a noise component which is having higher several kilowatts actually generated from a semiconductor or control devices in the power supply equipment. So what it will do means it will introduce some abnormal noises in the equipment such as TVs or radios. You may feel this sound when you switch on the TV, old CRT type of TVs. You can able to hear a noise when you didn't connect any kind of signal, like that sound which comes. So this is that noise which actually coming in your TV when you didn't connect any kind of input cable, video cable. Okay. Well, so how to measure them? So I just told what are the problems harmonics is caused. So and what are the measuring techniques are a preliminary test. So like you can able to predict from a K factor, you can able to predict from your TPF value or a PF value, and you can able to do some calculation work with K factor thing, and also introduce some interharmonics and higher order component importance of those parameters. And here is the term how to measure them. So this is a conventional method. You can use your oscilloscopes. Actually, this is a conventional method. If your oscilloscope has a function like f of t function, you can able to do this you can able to switch on this f of t, and you can able to predict what are the order of harmonics and how much is its amplitude by doing some simple mathematics. And it is also possible to find the TST also by using some applying mathematics. But when you're using oscilloscope, there are a lot of problems will occur. So the first problem when you're using oscilloscope, especially benchtop oscilloscopes, you have to keep in mind normal benchtop oscilloscopes inputs are non-isolated channels. You need to understand the difference between non-isolated channels and an isolated channels. So normal benchtop oscilloscopes are actually non-isolated input channel. There you should not connect your three-phase directly. It will short the one phase directly to the neutral. So you are supposed to do not connect your three-phase directly to a benchtop oscilloscope unless otherwise if you are having some differential probes. So if you are having differential probe, you can able to do this thing for a three-phase power quality analyzing section. And also please look around what is the maximum input allowed across your input channel. So these are the two main constraints while you are using your benchtop oscilloscope. One was isolated channel. You don't have that isolated channel feature. If you have a high voltage differential probe, you can use that. And what is the maximum input voltage it can able to stand. So these two parameters you are supposed to know before using the oscilloscope with the three-phase AC power supply. And what is the solution is simple is power quality analyzer. You can buy this kind of power quality analyzer. So it will by default it will comes with a isolated channels. So the isolation means it will isolate from your input charging circuit as well as the communication USB communication port. So everything will get isolated. So this is a Fluke 435 power quality analyzer. So the input channels actually can able to withstand up to 8 kV between its channels. The isolation level is the withstanding capability is up to 8 kV between its channels. So that's why most industry people are preferring this kind of power quality analyzer rather than an oscilloscope. And of course, we are having a oscilloscope with isolated channels also, like a Fluke 190 series or a Keysight U1620 series. So we are having a oscilloscope with isolated channels. So my point is, if you want to monitor a three-phase power supply with oscilloscope, you have to remember you should use the isolated channel. Okay. And how to measure them with the help of your power quality analyzer. So very simple. Just go and click that in the menu option like harmonics. So this will produce your harmonics bar graph. So as I told, it will automatically calculate your K factor also. This will be helpful while choosing your transformer to your utility as well as the total harmonic dispersion calculation. You can able to view this total harmonic dispersion in terms of percentage from your fundamental frequency or else in the terms of percentage of RMS from the fundamental RMS voltage. So that's the two possibilities. You can able to change that. Mostly auditing people look for a percentage of frequency. The solution provider like active harmonic filter installation people will look for a percentage of RMS calculations. And what is the speciality in this Fluke power quality analysis? It's possible to measure DC harmonics as well as the interharmonics and harmonics orders up to 50 Hz. So it is possible to monitor DC harmonics also. So what are the constraints you need to remember while using this kind of power quality analyzer is bandwidth. If you're having a power quality analyzer, the lot of questions are actually from industry people as well as from academic people is, I'm having a power quality analyzer, shall I able to connect at the output of my VFD? Actually the answer is no. You should not connect your power quality analyzer, handle power quality analyzer. You should not connect at the output of your VFD because usually the carrier frequency at your output of the VFD lies around 5 kilowatts to 20 kilowatts. So the output waveform of a VFD will like a PWM waveform. The carrier frequency will switching ranges from 5 kilowatts to 20 kilowatts. But the power quality analyzer like Fluke 435 is having a bandwidth up to 50 Hz only. It can able to measure the harmonics up to 50 Tara, that means 2500 Hz. But the carrier frequency of your PWM wave itself lies around above 5 kilowatts. So definitely it won't comes into the window of bandwidth window of power quality analyzer. So you have to keep in mind if you're having a power quality analyzer, if you want to measure at the output of VFD, if you want to know the output harmonics generated from your VFD, definitely you should have some higher bandwidth power quality analyzer than a power quality analyzer. So for that kind of solution, in market like a Fluke Norma 4000 is having a very wide bandwidth up to 10 megahertz and high sampling rate. Because if you want to capture a 10 megahertz signal, you definitely need a high sampling rate. So it is having high sampling rate up to 1 megahertz of sampling. So this is the thing we will suggest if you want to monitor the output of your VFD, if you want to calculate output power of your VFD and all those things. And especially this is the solution we will provide for the electric motor and inverter drive system people. And from this thing, Fluke Norma series, it is also possible to take some harmonic spectrum analysis and torque calculation capability, switching losses calculated caused by the inverter switches usually in the inverter. What is the loss from the switching? It can be able to calculate, it can be able to accurately measure that thing also. So what are the things you have to remember is while measuring harmonics is you can able to use your oscilloscope, but you should have some differential probe. Unless otherwise, don't connect three-phase AC power supply directly to your benchtop oscilloscope. And if you are having isolated channels oscilloscope, or else if you are having differential probe, you can use that. So the second thing is you have to connect your power quality analyzer like Fluke 435 at the input of your VFD, not at the output of your VFD. If you have a requirement of to monitor at the output of your VFD signals, definitely you need to buy this kind of higher bandwidth power analyzers. Unless otherwise you cannot be able to get it in a normal 50 Hz power quality analyzer. So if you are looking for an inverter, if you are doing work on inverter drive, and if you have a requirement of finding the power and finding the harmonics at the end of your VFD signals, definitely I recommend you to buy higher bandwidth power analyzer. So that's all been said, and here are some useful tips. So how to analyze, how to even predict what are the harmonics orders present in my electrical network. Say for example, if you are having a motor which is set at 1500 RPM at no load, but it is actually running a little bit higher speed than the set speed. You are setting from a VFD and your setting speed is 1500 RPM, but it is running higher than it is rated speed, sorry, set speed. Then you can able to imagine your electrical network having a positive sequence harmonics. So you know that a three-phase voltage or a three-phase current is possible to divide into three types of components, like a positive component, negative component, and a zero component, zero sequence component. And this kind of positive sequence harmonics will try to run your motor faster than your fundamental or a set speed. So in other hand, negative sequence harmonics actually try to run your motor slower than your fundamental or set speed. And this is a major problem, because if you are using the VFD to precisely control your speed, but at the end of your when you are measuring the speed with your tachometer, but you are getting a much faster than the set speed or much slower than the set speed, you should imagine your system has some harmonics. And here is a table which this is giving the order of harmonics versus the sequence. Just like a plus minus 0, the pattern repeats like plus minus 0, plus minus 0. For example, if my motor runs faster than my fundamental speed, I may imagine my system contains 7th order harmonics because of positive sequence, or else even order harmonics that usually won't happen that much. For example, if it is running slower than, so you may imagine you are having a fifth order harmonics in your system. So you can able to predict easily. And in both of the cases, whether a positive sequence harmonics or in a negative sequence harmonics, definitely the motor loses its torque and heats up. Because if it is having a higher order frequency component, it is actually designed only for 50 Hz. If you are applying more higher order frequency components, the loss will be increased because it is directly proportional to frequency. And the last one is zero sequence current harmonics. You may remember this, the triplen, third order triplen always adds up in neutral. So if you are facing neutral conductor problem, blindly you can say there are triplen multiples of harmonics, for example third order or ninth order. So you can easily able to predict if your neutral conductors are burning, just go and monitor the third order harmonics. This is a very useful tip. So apart from this, generally if you are facing your motor or a transformer or a circuit breaker are getting hit than the normal, or a faulty sounds from generated in your transformer or a motor, definitely there will be a sign for a harmonics or sometime in overload. So if you are facing overheating problem or a faulty sounds which are generated from your transformer or a power equipment, you should go and look for your harmonics. We can directly say that. So apart from this, harmonics are actually generated from the loads which produces a typical harmonic spectrum signature. Even I can able to predict what is the input rectification section in my SMPS. For example, so this is a table which is showing type of device and number of pulses and harmonics present. If I am analyzing the harmonics bar graph, if I am getting order like 3, 5, 7 and 9, I can definitely say there is some full wave rectifier or a 2 pulse converter in my network. So if I'm getting order like 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, there is a 3 phase or a 6 pulse converter present in my network. So this in other hand, if you're having a 6 pulse converter or a 12 pulse converter, you can imagine this kind of harmonics will happen in your electrical network. So if you're designing your electric drives or something like that, power switching mode, if you're using switching mode technology, so if you're using this converter types like with the help of semiconductor devices, 12 pulse or 6 pulse converter, you can able to predict these are the order of harmonics I can get from my power supply design. So you can directly go and monitor what is the range, what is the level of this harmonic. So here is a general equation. H is the number of so harmonic number is a product of N and P. N is just any integer. P is the number of pulses in the circuit plus or minus 1. So and you can able to predict the amplitude. You can able to understand how much magnitude it can go. Is actually the inverse of 1 by H. So here is a general equation. And that's all been covered for harmonics part. I think I made it a little bit clear. Okay. So if you have doubt, you can unmute yourself and you can ask at any time. And after that, I'm just introducing another important power quality parameter. As per the chart, this is the third most predominant power quality parameter which making more commercial problem. So we know the transients, we know about the definition. It says fast spikes on the voltage waveform. Here you can see like this, it will happen. And the transients have much more energy. Actually, it will destroy your electronic equipment as well as it will destroy your motor insulations also, because motor insulations are actually designed to withstand a certain amount of transient. If it is getting higher than this kind of its rated value, definitely the motor insulation gets failure like this. Okay. So as I told, they will cause some damaging in solid state components and failures in winding insulations. Well, so how to measure this? So when it comes into the measuring techniques, we are having a 2 meters like a power quality analyzer. It's having a feature called transient. You can able to directly monitor your transient. It will automatically able to predict it, and it will save that, and you can able to even view this kind of waveform also. But what I recommend is, if you want to monitor, if you want to do some transient study, the better option is go with the digital storage oscilloscope. Like as I told earlier, with the isolated channels. So with isolated channels is the best way to easily capture the transients. So as I told, luckily Power Analyzer Fluke 435 comes with a built-in scope function. You can able to read this kind of waveforms also. It will automatically capture the transients. Even it will automatically save the corresponding waveform also. It will automatically do the things. So no need to worry about it. But if you are using an oscilloscopes to capture, what are the things you need to remember? As I told, for harmonics as well as for the transient capture also, bandwidth actually matters, because the transients are usually lies in microseconds. You know that, like 0.1 microsecond or a 0.2 microsecond, which comes under the frequency of megahertz, like 100 megahertz or a 150 megahertz frequency. So if you want to capture that much of bandwidth, you should have some DSO with higher than that fundamental frequency. Say for example, for transition cancel, the fundamental frequency like for a 0.1 microsecond, it is 100 megahertz. You should have DSO with isolated channels higher than this 100 megahertz. Unless otherwise you cannot able to capture your transition. So if you are having a two oscilloscopes like on 100 hertz, on 100 megahertz bandwidth, on 500 megahertz bandwidth, you can try out yourself and you can able to predict more peak value in 500 megahertz than in 100 megahertz. So you need to keep in mind while you are measuring transitions, bandwidth actually also matters. And the second thing is how much voltage it can able to withstand. Like same as I told earlier, normally the oscilloscopes can able to withstand a peak voltage of 2 kVs only, or maybe the brand, or maybe the OEM. So usually it was built to withstand a peak voltage up to 2 kV only. But if you're going with the power quality analyzer thing, it can able to measure up to 6 kV of transient, which is far enough in industry side. As I told, it comes with the isolated channels. It can be able to withstand up to 8 kV. So another third one is sampling rate. Okay, so when it comes into capturing transients, now you may be familiar with how a bandwidth affects your transient measuring capability. Because transients are happening in a very few microsecond or a nanoseconds, to capture that you need a higher bandwidth, because 1 by 0.0 microsecond is around 100 megahertz. So if you want to capture 100 megahertz signal, I need a higher sampling rate. So definitely you need to worry about the sampling rate also. So these are the two things you need to monitor, you need to view before if you are going to transient measurements. So how to choose your oscilloscope? So what is the solution? So find your fundamental frequency. For example, if I am supposed to monitor at the output of my VFD, if I want to find the output transient at my VFD, so I can able to predict that my fundamental frequency lies around 10 kilohertz for a harmonics and all those purpose. But if I want to capture the transients at my my VFD output, which is actually happening less than 0.1 microsecond, say for example, and that actually lies around 100 to 100 megahertz, as I told earlier. Now this is your fundamental frequency. For example, because I want to monitor transient, my transient fundamental frequency lies around 100 megahertz. And this 0.2 microsecond depends upon your need. Somebody will look only for 5 microseconds, somebody will look for 1 microsecond existing transients only. So this will, you can short out and you can able to find your fundamental frequency to measure transients. So the recommended bandwidth to choose is, it should lies around 3 to 4 times your signal's fundamental frequency. For example, if I want to measure 100 megahertz transient, I should have oscilloscope better than 200 megahertz, around 500 megahertz is enough. So we always recommend a 500 megahertz oscilloscope if you want to capture a transient with the isolated channels. If you are going with the benchtop, we will provide with you differential probes also. And as I told you earlier, the third important is the max sampling rate. So you know that if I want to sample the 100 megahertz signal, I need a more sampling rate than normal frequency signals. So the good thumb rule is that a sample rate must be no lower than 2.5 times the scope bandwidth. For example, if I'm scope bandwidth is 200 megahertz, it should have some 1 giga sample per second as a sample rate. Unless otherwise, you cannot able to perfectly graph your waveform. Okay. So another most important thing, but normally nobody will speak around, is scope rise time. So when you are trying to capture a transient, the scope rise time specification actually matters, because this is the thing, specification tells how fast your scope will react to the signal. Okay. So if I want to capture a transition between in microsecond, your rise time should be in nanosecond. Unless otherwise, it cannot able to predict that much fast signal. So makes sense. So three things you need to remember: maximum bandwidth, what is your bandwidth, what is your sample rate, and what is the rise time while choosing oscilloscope for a transient measurement. So one of the key points is the rise time should be equal to 0.35 divided by your bandwidth. This is actually on thumb rule. You can able to choose the rise time of your oscilloscope before doing some transient So when it comes into the Fluke Power 435, it's very simple. Go and click on the menu like transients. It will ask you for the which one I want to monitor, like voltage transients, voltage dips, swipes, and everything. And what is the trigger level? So I can able to, if there is a sudden increment of 50 volt, it will predict that it is a transient. Whether it is a plus 50 volt or a minus 50 volt, definitely it's going to pick that it as a transient has happened. So these are the limits set by the standard. As I told, I will cover in the afternoon session. What are the limits? What are the power quality parameters? And what it is standard. Okay. Here you can see. So this is a transient mode, and here are some peaks. So this is in live trending mode, and here you can see as an event. As you saw in the earlier, like it will capture automatically the events, and it will also automatically capture the scope screenshot also. And so one of the useful tips is if you are facing a problem like motor insulation, oftenly motor insulation failure problem, no need, just go and directly monitor your transients, voltage transients. So as well as in power supplies failing, computers reset, like turning off on a computer by its own, definitely you can imagine that some voltage transients are present in your system. So you have to remember, if your equipment is subjected to more repeated transients, definitely it will fail at some time. So it's always better prevent your system from your transients. You have to measure it, and you have to predict how much is the maximum voltage in this I will go. So depends on that, you can provide some solutions like a snubber circuit or a isolation transformers. Okay. And the most underrated, I can call that as a untouched topic, or you may not hear this type of topics from your theoretical. So we are using a power factor correction capacitors to improve your power factor. This is a widely commonly used in everywhere in the world, but it is actually, what are the problems which are causing by this power factor correction capacitors? You may note that in the voltage sag point I told, if you're switching on and off your capacitor banks, it will create some switching transients. So if you're having a capacitor banks for a power factor correction, it will create some switching transients. Okay. So this is a major cause for the transient. Who is a major culprit who is introducing this kind of transient is this kind of capacitor banks. And so for that capacitor power factor correction capacitor, actually IEEE 18/2002 states some standards like it should operate up to 135% of its reactive power, as well as 110% of its peak voltage, RMS voltage, and 120% of its peak voltage. These are the specs of what IEEE was insisted for the power factor correction capacitor manufacturers, but none of the IEEE standard is showing how much is the limit for individual harmonics. So another problem arises due to the power factor correction capacitor is harmonic resonance. So the operation of nonlinear loads in a power distribution system, we know that this is actually creating harmonic currents that actually flows through your entire electrical network. When we know that most of our loads are inductive based, when the inductive reactance of that power system, what in our electrical network is increases, and capacitive reactance decreases as the frequency increases. You may imagine the formula of XL and XC, capacitive reactance and inductive reactance. It is proportional. What is this proportional to its frequency level? Capacitive reactance actually inversely proportional to the frequency. When a higher harmonic order or current are injected or supplied to a capacitor, so its capacitive reactance automatically gets decreases. Well, at a given harmonic frequency in any of the system where a capacitor exists, there is actually a point like a crossover point where the inductive and the capacitive reactance are equal. So we will call that point as a parallel resonance point. So if you are having a capacitor in your electrical network, definitely there is a point called a parallel resonance point will lies in your network. When our harmonic current, which actually matches to this harmonic parallel resonance point, which oscillating at this parallel resonance point, the harmonics will get amplified. it will even shoot up to 80% or even like a fundamental component, it will shoot up that much drastically because due to this harmonic resonance problem. This is a major problem why people are actually switching to a detuned filter and with respect to the automatic power factor correction AFCs. And because of this higher harmonic resonance, the harmonic order will show up. If you go into the energy auditing study in the most of the industries, we will do two kinds of studies, like one without capacitor bank and one with capacitor bank, to understand whether the capacitor is injecting some or amplifying some harmonic content or not. So this is a regular or a common procedure what energy auditors are actually following. As I told, nowadays they are using in combined with the detuned filters to reduce this inductive reactance problem. So I cannot able to reduce my capacitor. If I remove capacitor, definitely the power factor also going to get reduced. So to solve these problems, what they do is they will do some correction to this inductive reactance parameter. Thereby, I can able to distract the resonance point by using some detuned filters, some inductive filters, three-phase inductive filters. Okay. And another one power quality parameter, as you saw in the earlier graph, is unbalance, which is actually causing a much more problem than any other thing in our local areas, like around Tamil Nadu and around South India. And voltage unbalance, we know that what is unbalance. And voltage unbalance is a condition in which three-phase voltages have much difference in their respective amplitudes. So this is in Fluke 435. You can directly able to find how much is the percentage of deviation in unbalance. It will directly give you. We know that one voltage unbalance, which actually causes a high unbalanced currents in a stator winding. Due to this high unbalanced current, definitely there will be some overheat. It will reduce your motor life. So how to monitor the unbalance? So here is a simple trick. Just go into the menu. This is a screenshot of Fluke 435 menu. You can go into the menu option, like you can able to select your unbalance. So it will give you the phasor diagram also. You can able to view visually how much phasor degree differences lies in my electrical network, and as a numerical value it will give you a percentage of unbalance. Okay, so when it comes into analyzing of unbalance, we need to remember the same three components, like a positive sequence, a negative sequence, and zero sequence components, because every three-phase or a three-phase voltage or a current can split up into three components. And the positive sequence component is a normal component that is present in our balanced three-phase system. The negative sequence component results from an unbalanced phase-to-phase current. So you may note here, actually it was V negative, 0, A negative, and A0. So it will separately give you the what is the percentage of negative components and what is the percentage of zero components present in your system. It will having that much calculation capacity. For example, if I am having a negative sequence component in my system, because I am having a voltage unbalance greater than a 2%, which is allowed limit. So this negative sequence component actually causes a braking effect in your three-phase motor. We know that what is the braking effect. If you are having a motor which is having a rated current like 100 ampere, if there is a negative sequence component due to the unbalance in your input voltage is present, it will do some braking effect. It will, for example, if you are having 100 ampere stator current, if you are having a 2% of unbalance, it will give you a 16% of unbalance in current. It will give you a 16% of negative sequence current component. That means out of that 100 ampere, for example, 84 ampere will try to run your motor, but remaining 16 ampere actually try to stop your motor. That's nothing but a braking effect. So this is actually, this will happen if you are having unbalance greater than 2% in voltage limit. So this limit is actually defined by the standard. Okay. So we know that what is a zero sequence component. If it is present in a zero, if in your system, if there is any zero sequence component, it will add up in your neutral wire. It will hit your neutral conductors also. And so when you're listening to the earlier, when I introducing the power quality parameters, what is the parameters and all those things, I also told that there will be energy loss due to the power quality problems. So you may know that the energy loss due to the power factor correction. So this is also a power quality problem. You may know that. And what is the copper loss? So because in your system it has some impedance, the energy will loss due to the copper losses. So if it is having unbalance, there will be a loss because of negative sequence component also. If you are having a distortion, for example, harmonic content, definitely there will be loss in your real power, as we saw in your transformer derating section. So there will be a loss in due to the harmonics also, as well as if there is a current in the neutral conductor, there is an unusable power. So Fluke is the only brand in the world which is having this feature like an energy loss calculator in the power quality analyzer. You can go and connect, you can able to program what is your length of the wire and what is your material of the wire, what is the diameter. It will directly calculate the losses due to the components. I will start with the distortion kVA. This is loss due to the distortion, like a distortion in power because of harmonics. These are the powers as we saw earlier, which is actually not converted into a real mechanical energy, but actually this drawing from your utility. So you may remember that transformer derating curve I showed earlier. If I'm having 60% of switch mode power supply, my transformer will get derated up to 50% as per IEEE. So remaining 50% is nothing but a loss. Okay. So that thing, it will separately calculate what is the distortion kVA. So subtracting from a fundamental kVA. Fundamental is nothing but a 50 Hz signal. So it will do all the calculation of the remaining harmonic content kVA, and it will convert into a corresponding real power as a loss. You can able to see that thing also. And there is a feature you can able to give you a tariff, and it will directly give you the money. So how much price and how much money I'm losing per year or per hour per day. You can able to switch that thing. It will directly give you that kind of results. So another one is effective loss. As I told, it's a loss due to the transport of electrical power because of resistance in the wire. So when we add the correct parameters, like what is your resistance of your cable per kilometer and all those things, it will calculate your loss due to the cable impedances. So another thing is reactive failure. So we know that if you're having a reactive component in your system, it will oscillate from your load to source and source to load, but it consists of this transformer kVA. It is actually drawing from the transformer kVA that we cannot able to convert into useful work. So that's why we consider reactive component as a loss. That's why we are providing this power factor correction, capacitors and all those things. So it will convert the real kVR what present in your system, and it will convert into a corresponding real power as a loss. So if you can imagine, if I'm having a 42.1 kVR in my electrical network, I can imagine there will be a 752 wattage of loss due to unusable power I am wasting right now. So this kind of clarity it will be able to give. So as well as I told, unbalance due to the negative sequence component, the braking effect will happen. So what is the percentage? What is that negative sequence kVA? So it will calculate and it will tell you, it will convert into which this kVA is converted as a real power. So this is considered as a loss. So as I told you earlier, negative sequence component try to stop your motor as a braking effect. That is actually not a useful work. So what is that? Power and loss. So all those losses it will directly give you, and if you are providing a tariff value, it will also provide your how much is money you are currently losing. So this is a very important feature, and most of the energy auditors actually using this kind of features to find what is the loss in a industry or in a factory. As I told, I can probably say that Fluke is the only brand which is having this kind of feature, which is a patent technology. And most people don't commonly look for this flickers. So flickers is one of the power quality parameter, power quality healthness problem. In India, most of the IT industries actually looking for this flickers. Other than IT industry peoples, industries are actually not much more worrying about this flickers. So what is this flicker? So actually, flickers quantifies the luminance fluctuation of lamps caused by the supply voltage variations. Okay, so you can see this is a fundamental 50 Hz sine wave, but due to the fluctuation in the amplitude, there will be some fluctuation in the lamp luminance. We know that due to the voltage rise, the luminance will vary. So how to calculate this? This is a major mystery and depends upon a standard. The analyzer actually converts the duration and magnitude of this voltage variation into an annoyance factor, or we call as a severity factor, with respect to a 60 watt lamp. So the analyzer actually converts the duration and magnitude of voltage variation into a factor, into a useful factor where we can able to monitor or we can able to quantify that. So as by comparing with a 60 watt lamp, it will do that work and it will give you the directly what is the annoyance factor. Say for example, if I have a high flicker reading means most sensitive people would find the luminous changes as irritations. So it will give mental stress as well as sleeping disorders to the people who are more sensitive to the light variations. So actually this is the most underrated as well as the most unnotable thing, power quality parameter. So if Fluke 435 has a feature to monitor this thing also. So what is the cause for this flickers? So actually mostly caused by your electric arc furnaces or large motors in the nearby industries, because due to that interest current, the voltage will little bit fluctuate, as well as welding machines and boilers. So these are the major culprits who's introducing flickers into my lamps. So how to monitor, how to quantify this flicker? So this is a screen which is taken from Fluke 435. You can see it's a flicker meter. So flicker is actually characterized by four parameters. Like you can see, instantaneous flicker and short-term severity factor and a short-term severity factor for 10 minutes and a long-term severity factor. So these are all defined by the standard like IEC 61000-4-30. They told us to convert this kind of voltage amplitude and the time duration into this kind of factors, and you can go and study this IEEE standard and you can able to find what is the formula behind on this. And for power quality meter directly give you the reading. So depends upon the limit which was set by EN 50160. If something was go beyond the limits, it will give you a indication like a problem. So this much simply you can able to study your flicker in your electrical networks. So last but not least, the inrush current. So we know that inrush currents are the major culprit for the voltage sag problem. Voltage sag is the when you think in a commercial way, it is the most expensive to repair. It will damage more equipment than any other power quality parameter. So if I want to reduce the voltage sag problem, I need to monitor the inrush current. Unless otherwise, I cannot able to predict where the voltage dips and also happened. So in power quality analyzer like Fluke 435, there is a feature called inrush monitoring section option where you can able to monitor your inrushes. So Fluke has facility of monitoring up to 45 minutes. For example, in some of the loads, it has some variation. It don't be on a constant load. It has some variation in the load. For that purpose, we need to monitor at least for 30 to 40 minutes to find out what is the maximum starting current. So high peak currents can cause circuit breakers to trip unexpectedly because due to the overload. If I say, for example, if I rated for a 5 ampere MCB to a motor, if my starting current exists like a 30 ampere, definitely will trip. So it will helpful to set that trip level. It will helpful to identify the trip level, and it will also helpful to identify what is my what should I do for to limit this inrush. So unless otherwise, if you are not measuring this inrush correct value, you cannot able to provide the solution. So this is option you can able to find, and you can able to analyze your interest currents. So like you can able to select interest from the menu, and it will ask for how much duration you need to monitor, and you can able to set the nominal percentage and the threshold. So if there is something go beyond this threshold, and it will be able to predict your starting current, you can able to take cursors and you can able to view how much is the maximum current. So this is how much it is simple effective in Fluke 435. Okay, so if you're having in your electrical network, if you're having a circuit breakers tripping problem and circuit breakers burning problem due to the high peak currents, you can directly go and monitor. You can able to understand, you can able to predict that something is some interest current is actually hitting this kind of problems. So actually, as I told, by measuring this interest current, it's very helpful to setting the trip levels in the circuit breakers. And most of the analyzers captures the interest current and voltage trends in a half cycle RMS. You can able to even predict accurate peak value in interest current monitoring. The importance of interest monitor, as I told, it is actually causing the voltage sag problem. If I want to reduce the voltage sag problem, I need to find out what is my maximum interest current, whether my supply capacity is able to supply this kind of interest current for the short term month. So this is the thing why we are monitoring this interest current. So here is a summary. So what I told from the morning. So if you have a need, or if you're trying to solve, if you are interested in power quality troubleshooting section, so what is the procedure? So I told from the morning, like what is the problem, why they care about power quality, and what are the parameters, which parameters causing the major issue, and give an overview of all the parameters, as well as on its measuring techniques, and some tips also I told in interpretive way. So what is the procedure? How can I start, and where should I start? So this is a summary. You can able to read, like what first thing you have to remember is what kind of trouble am I getting from my electrical network, and the most important thing is time stamping. So if your logger don't have a time stamping facility, that's nothing point of doing some power quality troubleshooting work. So time is more important than any other things in power quality troubleshooting, because I need to correlate between the voltage fluctuation or voltage variation in the voltage to my system integration. So for example, if I am turning on a motor at 10:35 a.m., if I have a spike at 10:35 a.m., I can able to predict due to this switching on this motor, I just got this kind of spikes. So time stamping that much important. And this is like when did the trouble occur. So first thing is you need to know what is the trouble I'm getting, and when did the trouble occur as well. If you monitor and if you find with the time and day, it's very helpful. And where and what should be measured. So if you know what is the kind of trouble, and do some and if I already gave some tips to you, and most probably the tips will work out for you. So if you are having a trouble, like as I told earlier, you can do that kind of studies. For example, if I'm having a computer data resetting problem, or a microcontroller problem, or a lift elevator is actually jamming and interpreting, so go and study and try for a voltage sag. So this kind of prediction you can able to do. So first step is, as I told, you have to find your trouble, and you have to find when the trouble was happened, and where and what should be measured. So, and while measuring, which parameter I need to monitor. If you monitoring like voltage, current, and power, is always recommended. It's useful if you monitor all the parameters like voltage, current, power, and energy, and all those things. If you monitor, so you can able to easily troubleshoot your power quality problems. So you can able to predict some voltage and current trending itself for the most of trouble you are facing. So don't miss this voltage current while you are logging. So the cause can be easily identified much easier by analyzing the voltage and current runs during the time problem occurred. If I have the time logging with my system integration, I can able to predict easily the power quality problems. And that's also recommended way is you should measure some multiple locations simultaneously. You should have some 1 or 2 meters. So you should measure in multiple locations, unless otherwise you cannot able to find the flow of power quality pumps, where is the source I cannot able to predict. If you're having 1 or 2 meters, you can able to easily predict which branch circuit causing this kind of source problem in a very quick manner. And what is the assumed case? For example, if I'm facing a problem like a voltage fluctuation, voltage related problem like RMS value fluctuation, waveform distortion and a transient voltage and a higher order harmonic, that are related to a voltage problem. So current problem like inrush current and a leakage current. So what is my assumed case? For example, as I told in the earlier sessions, if I'm having a motor insulation problem, I can imagine there could be a transient voltage in my electrical network that is related to a voltage problem. So if you follow this kind of rule, so what to measure and when to measure and where to measure and what is the assumed case causes. So if you know this kind of, if you follow this kind of steps, it's very easy way to troubleshoot your power quality problems in your electrical network. And I think I covered my first session, my morning session. So it's a time for you guys to ask some questions. So you can ask queries also. You can
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for your valuable presentation regarding power quality analyzer using Fluke 435, voltage, current, hertz, and the range also you have mentioned for the oscilloscope. It spells unbalanced inrush current, harmonics, energy loss calculator, power and energy. Everything explained. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much,
sir. Kindly post the questions in the chat box or you ask directly. Dhalakshmi, madam?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. There is a question from Shanti, ma'am. Sir, a question to you, sir. How to reduce harmonic disturbances like flickering on LT loads, since in domestic loads we do not install capacitor banks?
Okay. So I didn't get the question right. So can you please repeat?
Yes, sir. How to reduce harmonic disturbances like flickering in LT loads, since in domestic loads we do not install capacitor banks?
Yes, in domestic load, we didn't install any kind of capacitor bank. But if you want to reduce the problem due to that voltage fluctuation, which is causing the flicker problem, it is mandatory, it is recommended to use a capacitor bank. Unless otherwise you cannot able to reduce the voltage fluctuation. There is no other way, or you can use some stabilizers. So reducing your LT cell. Say for example in the residential, you can go for a stabilizer for your complete home. It will stabilize the voltage. It will reduce your voltage fluctuation. That way you can able to eliminate your flickering problems.
Thank you, sir. This is Shanti from Murugappa Polytechnic. But I have installed some minimum amount of capacitor loads, capacitor bank compensation. It is not improving the power factor, the domestic load.
Because there is a calculation. Did you monitor that reactive power, ma'am? How much reactive power did
like they introduced in I got that capacitor bank minimum amount only. I just put in my house, and when I seen the change, it is not.
So I got your problem. So when you are installing a power factor correction capacitor, so what are the steps is you need to find out what is the kVAR consumption in your home before installing the capacitor bank. Okay. So unless otherwise, if you are not installing the rated capacitor, for example, if you are consuming 1 kVAR from your home, you need to install at least 135% of 1 kVAR. For example, 1.35 kVAR capacitor bank, you cannot able to improve your power factor. So there is a formula for that. So to achieve 0.9 power factor, you need to install 1.35 times of your rated, your consumed consuming reactive power. So you have to be in rated section, or else it won't be increased your perfect.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. Like you have enlightened us so much with the harmonic analysis, everything. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thanks for this excellent session, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
Yes, ma. There is no more questions. We'll continue in the afternoon session, pa. You informed the participants. Thank you very much, sir. Dana, ma'am, you kindly tell, ma.
Okay, ma'am. It's an opportunity for me to thank Mr. Jyoti Prakash, sir, for delivering lecture on power quality issues. Thank you very much, sir, for your informative session. Session was very detailed and regarding harmonics. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity also. So if you have any doubts, so I will post my email ID also. So participants, if you have any technical queries related power quality, you may you may ping me in mail, or else you can get my number from coordinators. You can call me also.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes.
yes,
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity. So on
Thank
the
you,
second
sir.
session,
Second session, sir.
Priya ma'am, we can stop the recording.
so thank you for your help. So I'm discontinuing.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.